Hey, how are you doing? This is Donna St. Louis, and I am joining you from the beautiful area here. I'm about an hour outside of London, and I'm doing a few keynote speeches here this week. I'll be here for 8 days, and the weather has been gorgeous. Oh my gosh, it's been great here. So I don't know, might stay. No, I'm just kidding, because they'll come pick me up. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go home, as it says on my documentation on the 26th. There's no need to come get me. All right. So today is all about how do you create a win-win, especially when you're doing negotiations without giving anything up. Now, a lot of times people come and they want to create this win-win after the situation has already started, basically, right? They've already had a situation started. They're deep into the negotiations, and now they're going, oh, I need to create a win-win out of this. If you set up your negotiation right from the very beginning, if you set it up right from the start, you won't really have to work that hard to create a win-win scenario for yourself. So first, let's talk about what is a win-win. Well, it's when the person you're negotiating with feels like that you gave up a little something and they gave up a little something, that you got what you wanted and they got what they wanted. And usually the operative part of that is that people feel like you gave up a little something. That's the big part, right? So maybe they gave in on price and therefore you gave up one or two things. And what they really want to know is they want to feel like, and this is really important, they want to feel like you gave up something. So I tell people, when you're going into a negotiation at the very, very, very beginning, make sure that you give them something that you don't mind giving up. That's how you actually do it. I always like to call these the point of ridiculousness items. So they're things that you don't really want in the first place. I'll use a very great example for myself. I might say, I need my entourage of 8 people to fly with me. I don't have an entourage of 8 people, and I definitely don't want them flying with me. And when I go back to the client later and say, you know what, I'm not going to bring anyone to me, they think if they go for it anyway, they'll think I'm a superhero because I didn't ask for it. Because I didn't spend it. But at the very beginning of your negotiation, when you first start at the very beginning, there are things that I tell people all the time, throw in as negotiating points that you don't mind removing because you didn't want them anyway. I don't want to travel with an entourage. I really don't want 8 people to travel with me. So if I throw that in there and they say, take it out, I go, fine. Now, what are you going to give up? So giving up stuff that you don't want is not really giving up anything. So I always say that is a great place for you to start, adding the items, these ridiculous items that you don't want. The other thing that I always tell people to do is consider some sweet spot pricing. So when I do sweet spot pricing, I do it kind of like this. So everybody has their own technique. I've seen like 8 or 9 sweet spot pricing techniques out there. This is how I do mine. So I find out, number one, what the client wants. What is their minimum desire, and what is their number one frustration? So I find out what's their number one frustration, because that's their pain point. And then the other thing I find out is what is their need, their business need. And then I take both of those things and I make that the baseline. This is the minimum of what they want. They want this person, this date, this time. So you're always looking at cost, time, and work. Those are the 3 things you're looking at, and that is your baseline. Super low, bottom line. Okay. And so let's just use some crazy number. So let's say your baseline is $1,000. Well, there is this secondary, and that's the number one package you're going to offer. It's your low package. That second package that you're going to offer is a little bit more of a premium package. You're going to add some things into that package, right? So the first thing is what your client wants as a minimum. The second package you're going to offer is these extras that they're probably going, I didn't even know I could have that. Really? You're going to add them in and you're going to put a premium on top of them. So it might be 50% higher than your first package. And then of course you have your third package, which could be double the price of your first package. And again, you're throwing in things that you wouldn't mind doing, or sometimes they say they're things that you're going to do anyway. And now you've just put a premium on them. So at the end of the day, your customer absolutely positively know that they want number one. That is the thing they're going to get. They would really like to have number 2. Number 3 might be way outside of the ballpark. But when they get to that number 2, they're already thinking about giving you 50% more money. Now remember, I told you, add in things that, again, it might not cost you anything. It might be a little extra bit of a moneymaker. They might even be things that you're going to do anyway. When someone starts negotiating with you, they generally aren't going to be negotiating with you, especially if you have these 3 items from that bottom point. they will look at that bottom point. Again, if it's $1,000, and they'll be like, wow, she's already giving us a deal for this at $1,000 because look at these other packages that they have. If this person especially is triggered by significance, they generally do not want that lower price package because to them, they're being a little cheap and they're seeing all the other things they could have. So a lot of times people buy the middle package and then you can negotiate from there. Now you have a spot to negotiate between, for example, the 1,000 and the 1,500. But remember, you're not giving up anything because at the end of the day, all they were going to do is spend $1,000. Now you're actually talking to them about how to spend another 250 or 25% more. So the two things that you could do, I would tell you, is number one, create the situation from the very beginning. That's the first thing. Put in the items of ridiculousness that you don't want. So that way, when you do get into negotiation and you start giving up things, you're not giving up on price. You're giving up on things that you didn't want anyway. I don't want my entourage to travel with me. I don't need 8 first-class seats, right? But if I have that in my contract and people go, well, she did give up those 8 first-class seats and that was, at least $16,000. See, so in their mind, I gave up something. In my mind, I didn't want those anyway, so it's fine. Because what you have to realize is that a win-win, although people always talk about win-wins as quantifiable, they're actually not. They're emotional. They really have to make the person on the other end of the table feel like they got a win, whether they did or not. See, because I can tell you right now that most people, when they sit down and they start telling me about a win-win with someone that they were negotiating with, and they tell me what the other person gave up, and then I say something like, are you sure they really wanted that? They go, well, yeah, I think they did. Right? You think you got a win-win because you think the other person gave up something that they wanted, but they may not necessarily have. So throwing in those extras and putting a premium on them and then removing them just to get to that bottom line price that you wanted and they wanted anyway does make your client feel like they got a win, even if ethically manipulation, that it wasn't. And then doing the sweet spot pricing has more of a psychological impact. People see the sweet spot pricing and they rarely negotiate on that bottom line number, on that number that's only $1,000. That first number that you put in there, they almost never negotiate on your lower end package. They will negotiate on your mid and your upper end package, but they will almost never negotiate on the lower end package. And the lower end package should always include exactly what they asked for. That middle package should include those nice to haves that you knew about because it's your organization, but that they had no clue existed. Those are the extras that you want to throw in there because this is what happens. When people see exactly what they asked for, they're like, okay, that's exactly what I asked for and that's what I want. But then when they recognize that they asked for a steak and now they realize that, oh, I could have dessert too, and I could have A1 steak sauce, and it also comes with a drink, and I can have a salad. So when they start seeing all these other things they have, they immediately start wanting them. And especially if they can see that they can have those things at a little bit of a discount, then they really want them. So now they're not even negotiating with you on your lower package. They're actually looking at your medium-sized package and they might negotiate in there. And that's what you want to do because now you've gone up to the next level. So that's what I would tell you to do. And once you get to those things, you'll find that your negotiations change significantly. It is very rare that I have to negotiate lower on price. Unless, again, I have people that sometimes are bureaus or agents and they're negotiating, so they don't do. But when I'm doing it myself, it's quite different because I don't have to negotiate on price because there's so many other items in there to negotiate on. And further, this is one thing to remember. If someone is negotiating with you on price alone, you've probably commoditized yourself a little bit and you've missed the opportunity to create that situation where they feel like they need you and they want you. So you may have missed out on that as well. So that is something else to think about. And I've already talked about that in another video where you have to make sure that you've eradicated that frustration and make them feel like they want you. So that way price isn't even a question anymore. Now they're not even discussing your price. They're figuring out how they can go and find the money. Anyway, this again is Dawnna St. Louis. I am here I'm in actually a place called Heathrow. I keep saying it wrong. Heathrow, and I'm about an hour outside of London. I have a couple more keynote speeches here before I head back across the pond. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And there were a lot of people that were interested in my talk for tomorrow, so I'll make sure that I do that one as well. If you ever need a keynote speaker that talks about persuasion, influence, and sales, my name is Dawnna St. Louis. You can check me out at www.dawnna.com.